A Gallup poll released this summer shows that 36% of Americans have a great deal, or quite a lot of, confidence in higher education. That's down by 20 percentage points in just 8 years. Although colleges provide social mobility for the middle-class students, many families just don't want to take the risk of getting a college education and taking on long-term debt. What trends have you seen among students applying to Central Scholarship for money to attend college or work towards a certificate program? Are they satisfied with the certificate program?
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, the efficacy of a college degree will always be and continue to be a challenge for higher education. The short answer to your question is yes. I have seen an uptick in students preferring to go the route of getting a certificate as opposed to attending a 2 or even a 4-year college. What I will say to that is there is great value in acquiring a college degree. The challenge that we are facing is providing information to students on how to attend and how to attend in a way that they do not acquire massive debt. That's a problem that we're dealing with in this country. That's a problem that has existed since there's been a change from the government providing support for public institutions and put the burden on parents. There has been a drop in the number of students since 2009 attending college, and there are many reasons for that. I provide information to our students to help educate them on the best route to take, financial literacy. My organization is one that recognizes, yes, there are different paths that everyone would like to take. Not everyone wants to attend college, but everyone should have the right to attend. So again, my short answer is there has been an uptick, and it's primarily because of finances and not being able to attend. But at Central Scholarship, what we do is we teach the students the best route in a way so that they can attend college affordably. We want to provide them with that access and not allow finances to be the deterrent.
Thank you. Valerie, the Supreme Court ruled earlier this year that race-based admissions were unconstitutional. In their dissent, Justices Kagan and Jackson said, quote, "The devastating impact of this decision cannot be overstated. The majority's vision of race neutrality will entrench racial segregation in higher education because racial inequality will persist so long as it is ignored." End of quote. Are they correct? How is your institution responding to the decision? And do you believe it will change the demographics of your freshman class? How do Maryland's public colleges and universities make sure they will have a diverse student body going forward? Not a short question, I'm sorry.
No, not a softball and not a short question. So first, let me say thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And the answer is yes, they are correct. This is a devastating decision, and it is really rooted in what I believe is not the truth. And so racial inequity does exist. And it exists throughout our society, and it exists in higher education. So the idea of racial neutrality or being colorblind is disturbing. And the fact that they have ignored really, or rejected, I'd say, some 45 years of legal precedent is really disturbing. So absolutely, they are correct. But narrowly, I would say for UMBC, which is the second part of your question, we have not had race-based admissions for decades. And we have an incredibly diverse student body. It is a thing of beauty if you've never walked across our campus. Our student body is about, as a whole, it's about 30% white, it's about 20% African American, a little less than that, maybe 19 or so percent Asian American, and about 15, 16% Hispanic Latinx. So we have a very diverse student body. And the way that we have done that, though, is because we actually believe that excellence without diversity does not exist. There's no such thing. If you're not diverse and you think you're excellent, you're not as good as you think you are. That's the bottom line for us. And we do that because we're trying to deliver a world-class education. And it is impossible to deliver a world-class education without different perspectives and experiences and people from different backgrounds. You can't even solve the world's problems without a diverse group of people at the table. So that's our reason for having a diverse group of students, and they are brilliant and extraordinary. And the work that they do together and the conversations that they do together, it is a thing of beauty. That is true education. And so I will also say it is a gift to be in the state of Maryland. If you're in public higher education, it is a gift to be in the state of Maryland. When people say, oh, you came here from North Carolina, I said, yes, I did. Yes, I did. I wasn't leaving them, but I was coming here for sure. And Maryland and the university system of Maryland is fantastic. If you look at the vision statement for the university system of Maryland, it has words like equity and justice and doing research and scholarship to improve lives. Like, that's the same vision and mission we have at UMBC. And so the SCOTUS decision does not change our commitment to those words and to those actions. And it is the way we believe we deliver the best education. So that is we're in a state where we actually can say those words out loud and then we can live them. And so, our job, I believe, is to double down, right? To speak out, to be more committed, to really serving the population and the diversity that is in the state of Maryland. I appreciate the previous question. I don't believe everybody needs to go to college. But the number is somewhere between the 50% of Marylanders who do and the 100% and 100%. It's somewhere in between. Because we know what education does to change families and generations and economic prosperity and communities. So, there is some room to grow. And in the city of Baltimore, there's definitely room to grow. Some 10 or 11% going to college? You can't tell me that the number is not bigger. Everybody does not need a college education, but somewhere between 11 and 100% is right.
Yeah.
And I believe that UMBC, 8 miles away, and all of us who are near here in the state of, in the city, have a real responsibility. And so for us, when you talk about how will we do that, not just UMBC, but other universities, how will we do that? You just heard it. We really need to think about access and affordability. And we need to be creative in that way, and we need to work with our schools to think about what are the pathways for students who can't even imagine that this is for them, or can't imagine that they can afford it, or families who can't imagine. How do we do that? For us, almost 40% of our graduates, a little more than 40% of our graduates come from community colleges.
Right.
I'd love that number to be higher, right? So I'd love to think about even more intentional pathways. And by the way, we have students on UBC's campus from every community college in the state.
Thank you.
So how do we do that? So
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Melanie, there has been considerable acrimony between HBCUs and other institutions over the distribution of programs throughout the state. In 2021, a federal ruling required Maryland to pay $577 million to its 4 HBCUs, settling a 13-year lawsuit. They had alleged that schools had been underfunded. Most recently, there's been arguments over whether a business administration graduate program would be duplicative of one at Morgan. And the state recently denied an application to add physical therapy programs at Hopkins and Stevenson University because it duplicated a program at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Where does this end? Where do you see a solution?
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me here amongst this great group. Um, so maybe just to correct the record a little, there's not so much acrimony as respectful disputes, and these things happen on occasion. These are outliers. There's hundreds of academic programs that get proposed every single year that go through the process and don't have these disagreements. And so, but they do arise from time to time. And so we have a system, I think, that sets up this adversarial relationship that's unnecessary. And it's the system itself, I think, and there is a commission that is looking at changing the process. It's set up so that people are pitted against each other in a sense, in a very unnecessary way, in my opinion. We collaborate far more often than we have these disputes. So we just last week signed an MOU with Morgan State University to have their students articulate into our athletic training program. So we do these all the time. So there's all sorts of agreements. And occasionally there are disagreements. And that's where the challenge has recently arisen. And it is a big challenge. So essentially what we're seeing is colleges and universities, from our perspective, really are centers of innovation. And so Governor Moore has recently said, that Maryland has a lazy economy. A lazy economy. And what he means by that, to some extent, is that it seems to take forever to innovate, to move ideas forward, to have new programs, new jobs. What are the jobs of the future? And colleges and universities, of course, have a huge role in doing that. But if we have an academic program proposal situation that takes at least 2 years from concept to when a student can actually enroll in the program, that's going to stifle innovation. And if hypothetically a university were to sort of block out whole swaths of the academic programming going forward, really that also serves to stifle innovation, because essentially the way the system works right now is you can create almost a monopolistic control over a particular academic area by just putting out a really broad program proposal. And the way the system works is first in gets it, whether that makes a lot of sense or not. So what we would look forward to is having much more collaborative, less adversarial, get in and discuss the programs and see what sort of relationships we could have and cooperate with each other, have combined programs across the universities. We're sitting here as leaders of universities that are all within 10 to 15 miles of each other. Surely it's in the best interest of the students to be able to see that cooperation and choose and work and potentially take some courses at one of the universities and some at the other, depending on the strengths of the faculty and the university itself. So we're really looking forward to a resolution with how the process works with MHEC so that we can get some of these disputes, and again, they are very small in number, but very important, and I understand that. But the small number of disputes where we can't seem to come to a resolution, let's find a way to have the cooperation on the front end and see if we can stop before they get to this, to where we've landed at this point.
Thank you. Sonja, for decades, the city and state have struggled with how to improve the city schools. You have led the school system during a remarkable 7-year gain in test scores for reading and English. But the city schools are still not graduating enough students who are well prepared. An era of no excuses in education has sort of led to the realization that economic disadvantage, structural racism, and years of disinvestment in the city schools have had an impact on student achievement. How much responsibility should the city schools take for overcoming those long-term effects? And what is the role of the community in this whole issue?
Great. Well, I will also say good morning and thank you for being here, particularly as a K-12 person with esteemed higher ed leaders. So I think a couple of things. One, what the no excuses, high achievement movement got right was that expectations for young people, regardless of the zip code in which they live, regardless of their life circumstances, need to be in place. And when we don't have those in place, we see slippage in terms of opportunity, in terms of resource investment, and we also know that just human nature, and as somebody who was taught K-12, human nature teaches us that if I can list a litany of reasons why someone can't achieve, then I am more likely not to teach them as if they can achieve. And I think the No Excuses movement got that right. I think where we are now is what I would say is a period of balance. And the balance is acknowledging that there absolutely is an impact that schools have. We even see it this year. There are student growth percentages that come alongside our state test scores, and we see in Baltimore City that in many of our schools, if you take students with their previous experience, their previous performance, and actually look at how much they've grown in a year, we have city schools that actually exceed the state's growth for students that start in the same place. And that's a good thing. That means that schools can change the trajectory of young people's lives. What we also know, though, is that, particularly through the work of the Kirwan Commission, acknowledged this, that concentrations of poverty impacts the kind of resource, the kind of time, the kind of supports that young people need to be equally successful, particularly when they have home lives where, frankly, the adults are under great duress just to put food on the table. And so I was telling folks backstage that I'm the mom of a high school senior. I actually have time and resources to take our oldest daughter to visit campuses and to work on her applications. We have young people in the city of Baltimore whose parents are working hard just to put food on the table. The other piece that I think we have got to grapple with that we learned over the last 2 to 3 years with COVID is we as a society have increasingly expected schools to do more. So now Baltimore City Public Schools is not just expected to understand the science of reading, kudos to the banner, but we are also expecting Baltimore City Public Schools to provide mental health. We are also expecting Baltimore City Public Schools to feed families. We are also expecting Baltimore City Public Schools to help young people and their families who suffer with chronic absenteeism, which means that you are absent 20 days or more in a school year, to find temporary housing. And at some point, we as a community have to ask ourselves, do we really expect schools, and do we fund schools, and do we actually have the expertise in schools to be able to accomplish this long litany of roles that have frankly accumulated over the years? And they've accumulated not recognizing that it is hard enough for a second grade teacher to be able to learn the right way to get young people to read, let alone provide the kind of psychological intervention and support that, frankly, wealthier communities, their young people go to the therapist. And I'll end with this, that I don't think that there's a difference in the needs. Clearly, their needs are outsized. I think, though, what we have to ask ourselves is who is responsible for coming alongside schools while we don't relinquish the high standards and expectations for young people from every zip code, but do we really expect an urban school district to also be specialists in all of these other areas? And I think that's something we have to ask as a community.
Thank you. Kurt. While four-year institutions often get the most attention, community colleges and institutions like the University of Baltimore are being asked to be the workhorses of higher education, providing a lift to students who graduate unprepared from high school, or as in the case of UB, students who come with a clear career goal later in life. What role do you see UB and community colleges playing during this time of transition in higher education? Do you think that more students will go to community colleges, and can you see UB surviving and continuing to thrive as the demographic decrease happens in enrollment?
Well, my colleagues, I won't use this as just an advertisement for my college, but let me just follow up on, first of all, Liz, thanks for the question. To follow up on something our colleague from UMBC said, that it's great to be involved in education in the state of Maryland. Maryland has been extremely supportive of education at all levels. I have the privilege of being both president of the University of Baltimore and chairman of the Board of Trustees at Baltimore City Community College. And the thing that I've learned so much about community colleges in our state is that we've got extremely powerful and wonderful community colleges going from the western part of the state all the way to the eastern shore. I've visited with community colleges. They provide career training, whether it's high tech, low tech, and in healthcare and transportation and all kinds of fields. They are looking to the future. And one of the things that I've seen is that our community doesn't quite embrace the community college in the way that states in the western part of the country that really very supportive of the community colleges. I think that we have some of the best in the country, and more students are starting to think about that. Now, the University of Baltimore educates a slightly different population than the ones that you've heard about previously. The average age of our undergraduates is 27. That is, we primarily educate on the undergraduate side people who are transfers from community college. And I just want to touch quickly on two quick things that you mentioned with the previous panelists. One on finances. At the University of Baltimore, if a student graduates from community college, is Pell Grant eligible, comes to our university, they can essentially come tuition free because we have an alum who has given us a grant that he pays for the difference between the Pell Grant and our tuition for community college graduates. So it's encouraged people to finish community college and then come to the University of Baltimore. And so it really does, it provides that incentive that you were talking about, that some people fear debt. You can come tuition free to the University of Baltimore. Now, on the other matter that you mentioned about duplication of programs, and I know Melanie and Dr. Wilson, David Wilson there, spend a great deal of time at the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I believe that we can do better and try to avoid this duplication. And one of the things, and I just mentioned because Calvin talked about ideas, is that I believe, and I proposed at one time, that we have in the city, we've reorganized some of our institutions into a city University of Baltimore, similar to City University of New York. That would help us in coordinating programs and streamlining some services. It would reduce some expenses. I believe that a city University of Baltimore is an idea whose time has come. I know that some people object to that, but if we're talking about moving forward and making new ideas and creating a way that we can be looking to the future and not fight the battles of the past, that something like that is what we ought to do. But to answer your question, we've got great community colleges, and let's continue to support them and then have those students move along to our four-year institutions. That's what I hope happens in the future.
Thank you. David, the shootings at Morgan and Bowie this past week were a tragedy for the students, the university community and the public perception of safety at both Morgan but other universities and colleges. You already have a police force. What more can colleges and universities in Maryland do to help protect students, particularly those who are in urban settings? I think all of these colleges and university presidents here are in a similar position as you are. And also, can you give us an update on what's going on at Morgan?
First of all, good morning, and also thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation as well. Before I address the questions directly, I'm not going to assume that all of you know a great deal about Morgan. And I just want to take a minute and make sure that perhaps you have some context in understanding and appreciating this national treasure, Morgan State University, the only institution in the United States that has been designated, the only university in the United States that has been designated as a national treasure in this nation. And so Morgan is also the fastest growing university in Maryland. As I sit here today, we have 10,200 students from 50 states and 70 countries. We are the leading producer in the state of Maryland of African Americans in 20 fields, in all engineering fields, in electrical engineering, civil engineering, industrial engineering, computer science, social work, journalism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I often say that Morgan is also one of the most diverse universities in our state, and that in the state, we do not have a peer. Let me speak about the diversity. 68% of our students are African American, but 32% are not. And so I would argue that we are as diverse as any institution on the panel, and the ones that are not in the state as well. If, for example, you challenge yourself to think about what defines diversity. Number two, when I say we don't have a peer in the state, it is because we are the only public, comprehensive, high research university in the city of Baltimore. And you look around the United States, a city of Baltimore's size will not reach the level of innovation, will not reach the level of competitiveness if it does not have a high and indeed very high research institution right in its core. And Morgan right now is on track within a few years to join our colleagues at College Park, at UMBC, and Johns Hopkins in being a very high research university.
That's interesting. Thank you. Could you address the question?
Yes, and so now, with regard to violence that we have seen across campuses in the United States, be it Michigan State, the University of Arizona, everywhere, University of North Carolina, I can go down the list. We have seen the proliferation of guns make its way onto our campuses much too often. And so with that in mind, yes, universities have to do more to protect our entire communities, and we are doing that at Morgan. I'm having a town hall meeting this afternoon. I'm going to unveil to the university community our plan now to move and make Morgan less of an open campus.
Interesting.
That doesn't mean that we are saying to our community that you can't come to the institution. It means that we're sending a clear message to bad actors that we don't want you here. And we're going to have to close off this free access in order to appropriately deploy the parsimonious security resources that we have to points of ingress and egress. I think universities have to think long and hard, if they don't have it, about having a sworn police force. Sadly, I think the days are slipping by rapidly when we can think that even in a setting like this, that we're safe. I hate to say that. And so, unless the country can get its arms around all of these guns, we got 330 million people in America. I think we have 1.5 billion guns. And so we have to really, really be serious about that. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult, not for just institutions in Maryland, but for all institutions all over the nation, churches and theaters, and we've seen the schools, to say with any degree of authority, if you come here, you are absolutely 100% safe. I don't think anyone can say that.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask our final question, we want to prepare for questions from the audience. If you would like to ask a question of our panel, please find one of our volunteers with a mic in the aisle and please line up. We're going to do one lightning round. If we have a second, we'll do two. If you had 2 or 3 words of advice to young parents on how to raise academically successful children, what would they be? And we'll start with Melody at that end.
Read with them.
Kurt?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but mine was going to be read, read, read.
Tierra?
Make the time.
Interesting.
Engage their curiosity.
Make math fun.
Sonja?
Be present always.
Thank you. And I'll try a second one. I hope you all have fun with this. Our lightning round 2, the question is, if you weren't in education, what would you be doing professionally?
I get to go first again? Oh, gee. Definitely a rock star.
Oh.
I'd be her backup band.
Running for office to change policy in higher education.
Oh.
I'd be careful about that.
I would be like Kurt, an attorney.
I'd be a NASCAR driver.
Oh, wow.
I would have a lovely bookstore cafe in Provence.
Okay, thank you. We'll start on the left side.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna try to keep this as brief as possible. First, I want to just say I am a graduate student at UMBC, and I appreciate President Sheares Ashby for all of her work and her energy. Now, my question is, I'm also a parent of an 8-year-old in Baltimore City. He goes to a charter school, but I've been studying at UMBC about Generation Alpha, who is our technological advanced generation because they were pretty much raised by smartphones. My question is, for Baltimore City Public Schools, is there anything in the works or any talks, any conversation about transforming the traditional classroom setting to a classroom experience that accommodates the special learning abilities of Generation Alpha and beyond?
No, that's a great question. And actually, the last 2 to 3 years, the silver lining of the pandemic was it really accelerated our work in this area. I will say we've concentrated a lot of the attention on how we really integrate 6 through 12. So really making sure K through 5 kids have the foundational pieces together, but we've already started expanding, for example, our virtual offerings. We've already started saying, we're not one of the school districts that banned ChatGPT because we were like, that's crazy, right? It's a Pandora's box. So how do we begin actually looking at AI to begin to leverage some of the amazing things that are going on? Yeah, it's scary, but to your point, this generation is actually energized by it. So I think for us, it's how do we use the investment, taxpayer dollars that went into exponentially increasing our technology, but build it in. But I will tell you, I don't know how, you said an 8-year-old? He'll
Yeah,
probably,
third grade.
okay, he might have to wait till middle school. But we are working 6 through 12 for exactly the reasons that you're talking about.
We'll go to this side now.
Good morning. My name is Derek Adams, and I'm an architect with the Adams Design Group. And we do schools, so we've done several schools for Baltimore City Public Schools and also worked on some university campuses. But two questions regarding the public school thing and also the school collaboration. I would agree with you, Dr. Santelises, with regard to public schools should not have to provide all of those other all of those other services to students, because you get away from doing what you do best, which is educate. So what is Baltimore City doing to come alongside of you to provide those social services, come alongside to provide those things to alleviate you from having to do that? So that was the question for you. On the Mayor Schmoke side, can I still call you Mayor Schmoke?
People call me a lot of things.
And when I went to college in D.C., there was a consortium between Georgetown, Howard University, Catholic, Gallaudet, AU, so on and so forth. Is there looking to be something similar to that in Baltimore with the colleges and universities here? That's my questions there. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I think that some of our most promising partnership with the city is in this area of mental health, because I think the city, everybody recognizes the large needs in mental health. I think the health department is also struggling, frankly, with the funding to be able to do that. But a bright spot is the large number of community-based mental health organizations that are run by a lot of them local folks in neighborhoods, people who have expertise in the field but who want to get closer to our communities rather than being kind of in distant institutions. And so I think there's great promise around braided mental health. I also think that the Community Schools Initiative that came with the Kerwin dollars of actually having individuals who are devoted to making the connections for families, so it's no longer the principal or the second grade teacher, right, that has to direct to a food pantry. You actually have someone whose role it is to help link families to those resources. I don't think it's everything, but it absolutely is a start that we can build on.
Kurt.
The consortium idea that you talked about is really being promoted by the Chancellor of the University System of Maryland. The one thing that's interesting, when you look on the stage, UMBC, UBALT now, and Towson are part of the University System of Maryland. Morgan is independent, strongly independent, but we do have relationships that we developed through a memorandum of understanding. I'll just give you one quick example. At our law school, we have a program called the Fanny Angelos program, where we work with the 4 HBCUs in the state of Maryland. We have students from those 4 institutions come and do pre-law training and get a leg up in their efforts to go to law school. Most of them have been extraordinarily successful. Some come to the University of Baltimore Law School, others go to other law schools, but that's something that we do through memoranda of understanding, not a formal consortium. We do have that kind of systemness being promoted, though, with the institutions that are inside of the University System of Maryland.
Good morning, Antoine Wallace. I promise you it's not a setup, but the two former questions actually lead directly into, when you talked about the competitive advantage of each of your organizations in schools of higher learning and development education, can you talk about generative AI in a arts and science context as well as an arcing R1 trajectory? I think I want to hear a larger narrative than it isn't scary, but like what we could do in the ecosystem of the education here. And if we could talk just briefly about what quantum computing also might do on your campuses and what level of investment is needed in order to bring the university system into that conversation.
I think Valerie and David might want to take a shot at those two questions, and maybe keep it to one question, one answer.
Sure. I'll start maybe where you, well, first of all, we don't think, so AI is scary if, for all the reasons that people, imagine on TikTok, okay? But the science is beautiful, okay? And we have experts on many of our campuses who are leading scholars in this field, and they are actually helping to define, the possibilities of AI, how we will use it across pretty much every sector, but also taking a scholarly approach of trying to really get in front of that scary part of it and think about unintended consequences and how you then actually build in security to the degree that you can around a lot of this new technology. So we consider it as this wonderful new lens through which to view the entire world, and our scholarship and our students are flocking to these disciplines. We have more students who want to study computing and information systems and all these disciplines where AI and all these new technologies are really growing. So this is, for us, it's, as scholars, as researchers, we see it as pure opportunity, but we also see it as a responsibility to get in front of some of those unintended consequences that were perhaps not thought about when, before things like social media. I'm more afraid of social media.
Right.
So that we can look at this differently from a scholarly standpoint. So I'll just stop
David?
there.
And we feel the same way at Morgan as well. We are looking at ways in which we can take greater advantage of AI and machine learning. We stood up a year and a half ago the National Center for Equitable and Trusted AI on the campus with annual funding in the neighborhood of about $4 million a year. We have recruited 14 of the best tenure track faculty members in the country who are joining us across all disciplines. We're ensuring that the liberal arts are represented, because what we want to do at Morgan, as these algorithms are being developed, we want our scholars in the room teasing out unintended bias before indeed they are baked in. And then last, we are calling on some of the AI technology to assist us in what we are going to spend the next 6 months studying, which is how do you actually detect the presence of a weapon, the presence of a gun in any setting. And we have looked at this. Our scholars at the university are moving it along. We think it might be at a point where in about 6 to 7 months, it will be all over the campus. So if you come to the campus, you're in any location, and if you have a weapon on you, that technology will pick that up, and therefore it will take that back to some central location, and we will know if there's anyone on the campus anywhere with any weapon at any time. And so there are so many ways in which I think we have to embrace AI, make it work for us. And then last, Dr. Santelises, this past summer, we realized through our center that young people have to understand this as well. And so we had several students, tons of students from Baltimore City schools come to Morgan for 2-3 weeks and basically began to introduce them to some of the positive uses of this technology because we do think that you have to start young.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of the panelists. We're out of time, but we really appreciate you coming for the conversation.
Thank you.